Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go through the process of getting from the first round of epoxy to the second round that I just finished up. I'm going to tell you how this stuff sands. This is the OptiFlow kit that I've been using from Eastwood. If you watched my last video, it's the roll-on, so I'm going to show you, hopefully you watched the first one to see how it went on the first round. I'm going to show you how it sands out, the body work that I've done in between then and now, and the second round of the OptiFlow. So this is the second coat of epoxy that went on here, so let's get into it. All right, so what you see me doing here is I'm just going through and I'm marking all the low spots I can feel by hand, or lower high spots, rough spots I can feel basically with a pencil. Just so as I'm going through and I'm applying body filler, I can get it on one quick run through, because the stuff tends to harden quicker than I'd like. And so I just go through, make these marks so my eye can catch it quick, and I can go ahead and get this body filler laid down where I need it laid down. After that, I mix up the body filler and I go ahead and start laying it down. Now, I gotta say, there is an art to this that I just have not mastered yet. As much as I try to get this stuff laid down smooth, I always seem to have rough edges and transitions and high spots. And so it leads to a lot more sanding than I'd like. But I tried to take the time to get this smoothed out as much as I could as I was laying this down. And like I said, I must be mixing this hot with too much hardener in it, because it doesn't give me a ton of working time. So I'm trying to rush through and get it all in. But once I did, it turned out, fairly good. I could see, the low spots were all filled in, and I was ready to start sanding. Now, I was excited to try out this dustless system from Eastwood. As you can see, there's all those holes in there, and they have a special sandpaper to go with it. All that's going to hook up to the system, the hose system behind it. And the theory behind it is that it is going to suck the dust away and minimize the dust that's floating around in your garage. And so you can see there the holes in the paper. I get it lined up and get it cut on there and get ready to throw down the guide coat. Now, this, just a little bit will do here. All you're looking for is just something to show the low spots and the valleys in this. And so just a little bit of a guide coat before you start going. Now, as I start sanding with this, I'm using 180 grit on this one, and the body itself sands very well. So that Eastwood primer sands great, but you can see I'm having some trouble with this sanding block itself. And I'll show you later when I'm doing the hood, but the suction's just too much. And so they have this adjustment knob here that I'm trying to fine tune in to hit that sweet spot where it's going to suck enough dust away, but not suction itself to the panel. And then we guide coat the main body here, a little bit more liberal with the guide coat there, and then I do the same thing, start block sanding. And this is just slow going. Like I said, guys, it's hours and hours of this that I tried to cut down to a reasonable amount of time to kind of display, how the stuff works, the system, the dustless sander, the Opti primer, but not bore you guys to death. And so first round turned out pretty okay, smoothed out fine, but there's some still work needs to be done in the valleys and things like that. Okay, we're gonna get started on sanding this hood. I've got the Durasander here that I'm going to use with this paper. I've been having some problems with it suctioning to the actual material when I was doing the fenders and everything on this, but I'm going to give it a whirl on this and see if I can dial in the right amount of suction. But before we get sanding, I wanted to have you guys take a look at this. So you can see some of the bubbling here, right? I don't know if that's going to show up on camera. I'm going to try to get down there, but yeah, you can see some of the bubbling there from when I applied this final coat. I'm expecting that to sand out. It all sanded out of there pretty easily, but this is where the guide coat's going to come in handy, right? We're going to throw the guide coat down on here, good and smooth up here, and then up through there, really nice and smooth. But you can see, hopefully that's showing up on camera, you can see some of the roll marks, right? So there's definitely imperfections and ridges in here that we're going to have to go over and get through. And I'm going to do another coat of epoxy. I'm expecting to pop through and hit some metal on this one too, but we'll get the guide coat on here, and then we'll get block sanding it and see if we can get this nice and smoothed out, catch up to that, and then get ready for the next round of epoxy primer. So as I get this guide coat down on the hood, I'm going to go ahead and break out the dustless system again. And now you can see I'm trying to use it here, but I've got this hood propped up on a sawhorse. And so it's very unstable. And so that's where the suction's creating all kinds of problems here, is that as I'm trying to get a good pull through this with a sandpaper, it'll suck and grab and kind of pull it off of these sawhorses. And so I'm trying to dial in the exact right amount of suction here. And so, I'll turn it down a little bit, but then what'll happen is it's too much dust and it's not doing what I need it to do. And so then I'll go back and I'll dial it up for a little bit more to get more suction back. And then the problem persists of it just sucking to the panel and pulling everything around. And so I never really got to the point where I dialed this in perfectly. You can see it just snagging there and grabbing. And eventually I just, to prove the point here, I stick it and you can pull straight up and it sucks the hose off. So it just got to be too much. I never got it fully dialed in, and I think it's better served on something that's a lot more stable than this. So on the main body it's fine, but I ended up switching to the Durablock here, and this allowed me to drop down to 120 grit and really start ripping through this primer. And so I'm going through, getting a lot better removal of that product there, and allows me to rip through this a little bit quicker. But you'll see here, it just creates a huge mess, right? So there's all that dust that the system was kind of taking away. And so that's kind of the price of this. And so, a little bit faster and a little bit easier to work with. And then eventually I switched to doing it by hand for the areas that the block wasn't doing me any good on. And I had to use the vacuum, pull that out, because it was too much dust as I was blowing it off. It's getting all over the other vehicles. And so, it's on and on with this, a little bit of vacuum, a little bit of sanding, a little bit of vacuum, a little bit of sanding. And we finally get to a smooth hood. Okay, so a little bit of sanding on here. As you can see, hopefully you can tell the difference between these two sides, right? So I'm mostly through the guide coat over here. I've got a few spots I need to go through and get in here and in here. Those are low spots that I don't know if I'm gonna skim coat or what I wanna do with that. They're just so insignificant on such an expanse. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Back here is where I'm really having an issue, because I think it is the metal on the hood is just weakened, and you can pop it up and down with your hand. I don't know if you can tell that's coming through on camera, but that has just sunk. So block sanding that, you can see the two areas I'm hitting right there with the block, and then that middle spot is just a low spot. And so I may push it up, but I don't think there's anything I can really do short of heating and treating the metal and bending it. And this isn't gonna be a show truck, so I'm not gonna go through all that hassle, but we gotta get this side to look much closer to this side here. And then we should be good to put on the next coat of the epoxy primer. You can see a few spots where I'm popping through the metal. Going back here I've hit. There's one up here somewhere, but anyway, in this process, that's what's gonna happen, right? You're gonna go through and there's some metal right there I've hit, there's some metal right there I've hit. And so I'll come in and maybe tap those down a little bit with a hammer. If I can find my body hammer, they're around here somewhere. Just give those a little tap, take it back down, and then we'll be ready for round 2 of the epoxy primer, and then do this process all over again. But, like I said, this is just hours and hours of this, and so not too exciting to watch. All right, so we're back on this fender here, and you can see I've already done some sanding. I've got some body filler in here. I've sanded a good bit of it away, but you can see I was a little sloppy with my application down here. There's some ridges and things like that, but I'm already hitting metal. But I gotta get this thing ready for the second round of epoxy, so I gotta get everything smoothed out. So I'm gonna go back in with the orbital sander and concentrate on getting these ridges knocked down and then feathering out. I'm gonna try to stay away from these high spots for now, and see if I can get this feathered a little bit and get ready for the epoxy, because I'd like to do the same thing I did last time and get it all done in one shot with round 2 of epoxy. You can see the hood is, I gotta wipe it down with wax and grease remover, but other than the spots I popped through, you can see the spots there where I popped back through the primer, and then some metal hits over here. I think this one's ready for round 2. I did the final shot with 220 on it, so it's ready to go. And then I gotta do the doors and this, that, and the other. So like I said, it's hours and hours and hours of the same thing. But let me get rolling on this and see if I can make some progress on this fender. So as I'm switching over to this DA sander here, what this allows is just so much faster cutting through this filler, but the price you pay is that it doesn't smooth out the panel as much. And so this is a mistake I made on the Bronco. I ended up painting the Bronco twice because the first time I did it, I did a lot of it with this smaller sander, and I looked at it, and in white and in the primer it looks great, but man, once you put color on it, you can really see all the imperfections that you left in there with something like that. And so you know, I just continue sanding here. You saw me getting the roof a little bit. Now I'm blowing all the panels off, trying to get them ready for the second round of epoxy primer. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe them down with wax and grease remover, which I didn't do on camera for some reason, but then I'm going to mix up the epoxy primer 1-to-1 ratio, same as last time, and mix it in small enough batches that you can get through it in about 20 minutes. And so I think the most I would mix is maybe 20 ounces at a time. And then I would, you know, for this initial one here, I poured over the roller to get the roller loaded and ready to go. And I'm going to start on the hood. And what I figured out is that I've got that smoothed down with that 220. The first couple passes here, I was skating. The roller wasn't actually rolling. It was kind of just pushing it around. So I had to get some bite or some purchase on there to get this to actually roll again. So I had to get a little bit of primer down, and then it started rolling pretty well. And you see it just going on, and nice smooth coverage of that hood. And so, you know, I did a couple coats here, really, you know, concentrating this time on not allowing it to bubble, because like I said, I saw some of them that smoothed out, but enough of them didn't. Then I wanted to make sure that there were no bubbles and minimal, you know, track marks in the primer this time, because it will give me less to sand out. And then you move back, do the doors really quick, and then back to finish out this little bit here on the hood to make sure I've got all of the first round of this used. And so it went on good and smooth, just like I did the first time. And I would say maybe even a little bit better, because I had, you know, I had an idea of what I was doing here. It was less of a learning curve this time. Then I go on to the fenders here in the main body, and it's the same thing. You know, with the first learning curve out of the way, I figured out how to load the brush and not waste as much product on this go round. And so, you know, this was a lot smoother and quicker than the first time, because the hesitation and the trepidation of using the product was gone. And so ultimately I would recommend this. If you don't have the ability to get a paint booth up in your garage or wherever you have it, I would say this system will do exactly what you need it to do, right? It will go on, it will give you a sandable surface to get level and flat, and then you can start working. But you know, the mess is minimal. There's some drip. You know, if you have a beautiful garage floor, maybe I wouldn't, you know, I'd throw down some tarps or something like that, but that's about it. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do here is they have this epoxy primer that I'm using in these sprayable cans. It's a 2-part in a can, and so what you do is you puncture an internal cylinder in there that's going to mix the 2 parts in the can. And so you have essentially what I just laid on with the roller, you have in this can of sprayable for the hard to reach places, the door jambs and things like that. And so you shake the product up really well, and then I wrote the time and date on here because this is only good, it has a pot life of 48 hours. So if you don't use it all immediately, you got to have 48 hours, you know, to use it. And then you can dial in the amount of spray out of the nozzle. And so I just went for a medium spray pattern, and then I start going after all of these areas that I couldn't reach and wasn't able to get with the roller, and start filling out the rest of the body. And so a little bit of taping here. I'm not too concerned with overspray at this point, right? Because I'm going to go back in and razor blade the windows and things like that. So just kind of keeping the mess to a minimum, but not super worried about it. And so go through all the hard to reach areas and all the areas that the main roller wouldn't get to. So like in these crevices down here, I couldn't get good coverage down in these crevices. Even though I could get the roller to it, I couldn't really get the coverage I was looking for. So just going back through and touching everything up. Now I ended up going through 2 cans of this to do these, but it turned out fantastic. So now that the body is all in one solid color, I'm really liking the way this is turning out. So again, it's going to be more block sanding, but after this, I should be able to pop into the urethane primer and get ready for final coat and initial color. Okay, so we finally got a good enough break in the heat to get this done, so let's take a look at what we did. Battery's about 10%, so we'll run through this pretty quickly here. So after going through, and I'm sure I explained this, narrated this in the video, got this down to 200 grit. This is the second coat of epoxy, and it's looking pretty smooth on there. The first go round, there were some bubbles that I wasn't worried about because I thought they would flatten out, but it turns out that they do not. And so you can see there's tons more block sanding to do, right? Like you can see some runs in here that I'm gonna have to address, some runs there, but all in all, it's smoothed out fairly well, the areas that I was looking to smooth out. And so we'll go through and it's back to block sanding again, but this turned out pretty well. And again, gross in here. This is gonna need a ton of work. I was trying to get this in while I had a break because it's going back up into the high 90s here. And so there's a lot more block sanding to go on in there. And then, you know, some areas back here they're gonna need to address. But it's an iterative process, right? This is lather, rinse, repeat, just keep going, keep going, keep going. So all in all, pretty happy. I sanded the roof, but I didn't reapply up there. I need to figure out what I'm gonna do. Let me squeeze out through here. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do on the roof. I don't think that I want to paint it per se. I think I want to do this in two-tone. I'm still debating on colors, and we'll have a final color here before too long. But all in all, I'm fairly happy with where we're at so far. Like I said, the heat's coming back, so it'll be slow slogging from here. But I owed you guys a video. I said I would get one out every Tuesday, so by golly, I'm gonna try to keep my word to that and get this one to you. So with that, we'll go back to sanding. Hopefully next week's video will be getting that thing running. I've got some parts that I'm waiting to get in that they shafted me. They said they should have been here on Friday, but it's Sunday and I'm still waiting on them, so we'll see. But thanks a bunch, and I'll see you guys in the next video.